The air conditioning in my truck hasn't worked for quite a while, and I actually found the source of that problem while working on my big brake upgrade. As I was looking through the wheel well, I noticed that the lines that meet the compressor had evidence of leaks, so that's why my system wasn't holding pressure and it wasn't working. Also, when I went and took off the two caps here for the lines, I heard a sound of air escaping, so I know that the valves are bad. So I bought an AC rebuild kit, and I'm going to go ahead and undo every single line, change out every single O-ring, and I'm going to change those valves out as well. Obviously, before you start this, you have to get rid of all of the refrigerant that is still in your lines. Now, I've had mine professionally vacuumed, so my system is empty right now. So I can just go ahead and start taking apart the lines. In order for you to do this, if you have any Freon left inside your system, you need to have someone vacuum it out. Now, I ordered a rebuild kit on Rock Auto, and basically this kit has all of the seals, new valves, and an expansion valve. I also bought this AC dryer. Every time you open up the system, you get moisture in there, you want to replace this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this valve stem removal tool, and I'm going to change out the leaky valve stems from the line inputs. Don't freak out about that sound. It's not refrigerant. That's actually the vacuum that I've created in here starting to absorb air. I think that's about free. Now I'll just need some needle nose pliers to pull that out. That's what the valve looks like. It's kind of like the one on a bicycle or a car tire. These are the two old valves. Let's go ahead and put in a couple of brand new ones. Now the bag with the new valves will contain two small ones and two large ones. The ones for the Tacoma are the two large ones. Not really sure what these short ones are for, but I'll just hang on to them as I proceed through the system. Who knows, maybe there's a valve somewhere else, though I highly doubt it. Alright, so using my needle nose to lower it in place. Just go ahead and lower this valve in here. And do the same on the other side. Alright, and just take your valve stem tool and tighten them down. This is one of these things in life that you don't want to over tighten. Just tighten them till they're snug. Otherwise you risk damaging those little O-rings on there. And then you'll have a new leak on your new valve stem. That's that. Let's put the caps back on. So when I was removing the lines that go to the compressor, thinking that those were the bad O-rings because that's where I saw evidence of leaks, I discovered that those O-rings were actually in perfect condition, which is when I started realizing that my fears that the crimps on the line is what actually failed. So then I said, I'm not going to mess around with this anymore. I went ahead and ordered 2 brand new lines, and while I was at it, I ordered a brand new compressor because I want this thing to work and work well and work for a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and replace all the existing stuff with all brand new parts so that I'm guaranteed that everything will function as intended. Now, this is a Denso compressor. Denso is the original manufacturer for the factory Toyota one, so I know that this is going to fit and it's going to work correctly. It also comes pre-oiled, which is nice, but there are still some instructions that you need to follow. Do read those instructions and do follow them, otherwise you may be in a world of hurt after you buy an expensive compressor and it goes bad on you. So in order to understand how to take out the old compressor, it helps to look at the brand new one. So first thing you're going to obviously do is undo the belt, right, that's at the pulley. That's going to allow you to release the entire thing once the bolts come out. Then there are 4 bolts that go through the compressor and into the mount on the motor. And there's also an electrical connection that you're going to have to undo. Now you'll notice that this up top has no connections for my hoses, and that's because this is a shipping plate. You're going to have to undo this and transfer the connection plate that's on the other one onto here so that you'll have the connections you need in order to connect the hoses. There are instructions for how to do that included with the compressor, and you should follow them to the letter, especially because these things all have a specific torque that goes to them. And there's also O-rings that need to be installed within. Alright, so at this point I'm going to install the service valve off the old compressor onto the new compressor. Now, before I do that, I need to drain the oil that's in here. This does come filled with the correct PAG 46 oil. However, it will most likely be overfilled, which is why you need to drain what's there and put in the correct amount. So the factory service manual says that this needs to get 125 cc's. You're not going to be able to drain out all the oil, so what I'm going to put in is about 110 cc's, and that combined with the amount of oil that stays inside should give me the exact 125 more or less. So the first part of this is going to be actually to just undo the cap here. There's a Schrader valve. I'm going to release pressure or vacuum, whatever it is that they put in here. Okay, that's done. Now, using an 8mm socket, you can undo the bolts that come on this thing. Wow, they are really on there for no reason whatsoever. Now, these bolts will be torqued in there pretty strong, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a breaker bar on my socket in order to make it easier to undo. They're only a size 8mm bolt, so I don't know why they went with so much torque, but oh well. That's done. With that done, I can go ahead and undo these screws, bolts, whatever. Train myself to always go in a crisscross pattern. And you will not be reusing these bolts with the service valve. You will, however, be reusing them on the old compressor because you installed this block off plate onto the old compressor just to seal it off. That came off very nicely. I expected more of a struggle. Now there is an O-ring seal in here. You're going to go ahead and remove that and replace it with a brand new one, either the one that came with it or one from the Santec kit that I happen to have. Either way, it's about the same thing. Just using a needle, go ahead and pop this thing out of here. Like I said, not going to be reusing that. That one's already been compressed once before. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and drain out the oil. Got a little cup here. Got some cardboard on my table so anything that spills won't fall and make a mess on my table. And I'm going to invert this. So you can see the oil starting to come out. Now I'm going to rotate the clutch so I can get extra oil out of there. All right, I think that's good. Got a little bit of oil in the cup. Some of it fell on the cardboard, right? So always have something on the bottom because it's never going to work out perfectly. You'll always have some spills. At this point, the only thing left to do is to add oil back into the compressor. As I said, I'm going to do 110 cc's. cc and a milliliter are exactly the same thing. They're 1-to-1. So this is a 10 milliliter syringe, 10 cc, same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and put oil inside the compressor, primarily through this orifice here, and I'll be turning the clutch as I do that so that the fluid can fill the volume. So let's go ahead and start that out. But first, you kind of support this. All right. Put my syringe in here. All right, I got it 10 milliliters. And we're gonna do this 11 times. 1, 2, 3. You rotate the clutch a little bit. All right. 4. 5. 6. Okay, let's rotate a little bit more. All right. 7. 8. 9. Rotate some more. All right. All right, 10. And 11. And this one's got a little bit extra in there, just in case. Rotate that. We should be good with that. Now let's go ahead and open up our brand new O-ring. You're going to want to lubricate your brand new O-ring using the very same oil. I've actually already got it all over my gloves. I'll go ahead and squirt some into the channel there. That ought to do plenty. Alright, that's fully lubricated. I'm going to seat that O-ring in the surface. May have gone a little overboard, but that's alright. Let's use this rag just to wipe down surfaces. And this being a clean rag, I'm going to just get the area around the O-ring, like the outsides of it. Just wipe off excess oil. I did not have to do the service valve part last time because the last time I ordered these, it came with it. Okay. So with that done, we're going to bring over the service valve. Now, with the compressor facing away from you, right, the service valve should face to the right, and it's easy to tell actually because the service valve surface, right, the bottom of it matches up to your O-ring, so you know how to place it. But just in case, I thought I would just mention that. So let's bring it in, drop it down on the surface. There it is. It's very dirty. I wiped it as much as I could. Now you're going to come in and use the bolts that were holding the service valve into the previous compressor. Right, and these are an Allen head bolt. Just lightly thread each one in by hand. I want to say they use a 6mm Allen head. Let's see if I'm correct. Yep, it's a 6mm. So you're just going to gently thread these down by hand until they're not in a crisscross pattern, right? Diagonal, one side to the other, until they just meet the surface. Don't overdo it. Then you're going to get a torque wrench. You're going to set your torque wrench to 18 foot-pounds. You're going to torque this down to 18 foot-pounds. So I've got my torque wrench back here. Let me set it. Alright, so I've got my torque wrench set to the 18 foot-pounds. I'm going to tighten these guys down gently. Kind of going crisscross. I'm not torquing it all the way yet. Just really turning my torque wrench around. That way I can press that O-ring as evenly as possible. Alright. So here goes the 18. One click, diagonally across. 2 clicks, and up 1. Three clicks, then we'll diagonally across to the last one. The final click, and that's it. You're done with this part. You'll notice that in order to remove these bolts, I first hit them with a lighter just to heat them up a bit. That's because they felt like they were going to snap when I was trying to undo them. So in order to keep that from happening in the future, I'm adding some anti-seize here on the threads, and that's going to help me to remove them with much more ease the next time around. Unfortunately, it's borderline impossible to put the compressor back in through the bottom without spilling the oil that's inside the compressor. So what I've done is I've removed the intake tube, right? So created a gap between the intake tube on the side of the manifold over the valve cover and the box. And this space here should allow me to slide the compressor in through the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and toss on a pair of gloves. Then I'm gonna grab my compressor and we'll try placing it in through there. Alright, you want to move these wires out of the way. It's like we can ever so slightly nudge the coolant hose. It's a very tight fit, but I'm in here. Alright, now that I'm in, I'm going to have to use the bolts to hold it in place, but I don't have the bolts with me, so I'm just going to lay it this way so that none of the fluid spills. Then I'm going to bring the bolts and put the bolts on there. So I've got my bolts. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 of them in up top just to hold it in place. I'll start with one on the front. So I'm just going to lift this up to the bracket and align it. Now slide a bolt
into place and lightly thread it in. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's manageable. You just got to support the compressor so that it's not too difficult to do that. And once you get the second bolt in, then from there it should be fairly easy. Get the thread started on that guy. Alright, I've got 2 bolts in. Now I'm going to come in with my socket and just use that to help me turn the bolts. Okay. With that done, I'll go ahead and I'll put in the 2 bottom bolts. Now one thing to keep in mind is, and I didn't know this the last time I did this, is these bolts only get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. So thread them in by hand, seat them down as far as you can, then come in with your torque wrench set to 18 foot-pounds, and that's it. Do not over-torque these. Probably why it felt so scary when I was undoing them, because it really felt like they were going to break. Now to get these other 2 in, I'm going to actually work from the bottom of the truck just because it'll give me much better access. At this point, I'll go ahead and torque the mounting bolts to the 18 foot-pounds. So I'll start with this guy. And of course, kind of hard to get this set up in here because I have very long sockets. I wonder if I have a short 12 somewhere I can use.